Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. I was watching the YouTube channel Jason A. I've been watching him for a number of years now. He essentially just puts together compilations of news clips from various news agencies about specific topics. And the topic of this video was El Niño. I'm sure that you're already aware, and I was already aware, that we're having a strong El Niño this year. But what I didn't realize is how bad it is, in that the main effects of it are not going to be felt until next year. I thought it was going to be this year, but no, the main effects are not going to be felt until next year. And you know what else is happening next year? The rededication of the Salt Lake Temple. And I immediately thought about the prophecy of President Wilford Woodruff, who dedicated the Salt Lake Temple back in 1893. And I thought about the implications of that prophecy and what's going to happen next year with El Niño. And there were also other interesting things that came up as I was researching for this video. So I'm excited to share with you what I found. Before we get into it, I want to give you a quick update. The last video that I did was about the amount of contact that our prophets and apostles have had with Jews. We were talking about the two witnesses and multiple prophets because I found an interesting quote from Ezra Taft Benson about potentially there being more than just two witnesses to the Jews. Well, anyway, today, about 5 hours ago at the time that I'm recording this video, there was a social media post by Ulisses Soares. He was in Manhattan, New York City, with a group of faith leaders for a Shabbat service at Central Synagogue. This is the day after I made that, the day after I posted that video about contact between our church and the Jews. So I have a spreadsheet where I'm keeping track of these things. I've renamed it. In fact, I renamed a few different spreadsheets that used to be under the timeline category. I now have just simply church history. It's actually my very first spreadsheet when I sort it into alphabetical order. Church history, Judaism, and then church history, Missouri. So we're looking at my church history, Judaism spreadsheet. It started out just trying to track how many times church leadership, specifically prophets or apostles, have gone to Israel. But then it turned into how much contact have we had with the Jews, as reported by the news or in social media posts. And here's my timeline right here. So this is the newest item. And I'm going to be adding more. There's more I need to add to this timeline. But here is Elder Soares, and he's with Rabbi Joseph Potosnik and Rabbi Diana Gerson of the New York Board of Rabbis in Midtown Manhattan. So I thought that was really interesting and significant, and I recognized Rabbi Potosnik's face. We have seen him before. There have been a number of times that we've referenced this newsroom article where Elders Holland and Cook were in Israel to rededicate the Orson Hyde Memorial Garden at its 175th anniversary. And while there, they met with a number of prominent Jewish leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And I guess Rabbi Potosnik was also there because here he is, right next to Joe Lieberman. So this is not the first time that our church has had contact with him. So I think that's really interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead and before we talk about El Niño and what's coming, and like I said, it seems like it's going to be worse than what I thought originally. Let's review this prophecy, or what was said by President Wilford Woodruff at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple. Okay, Let's actually read this one first. This is on my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z, row 597 for Salt Lake Temple Dedication Prophecies, because there is more than just this one, but we're just going to cover this one. This is an account from, at the time, Elder Joseph Fielding Smith in the April 1946 General Conference. He said, "I heard President Wilford Woodruff in this stand, this same place where I stand, bear witness as he had done in other places in 1893 and up to the time of his death, that the angels who had been waiting to go forth to reap down the earth had now been sent upon that mission, and they were in the earth. Therefore," he said, "we may look for calamities, for destruction, for plague, and bloodshed." And we certainly have seen that since 1893. We've had a couple world wars, and we've had plenty of record-breaking events, things that the world had never seen before. But in this video, we're talking about this very, very powerful El Niño. And I'm going to show you some of these quotes from these various people in these news stories talking about how bad it's... There was one that was talking about the fact that this may become the El Niño of the millennium. That's how strong it is. I do want to reference one more quote. This is also from Joseph Fielding Smith. You can find this in the Doctrine and Covenants student manual. It says, President Joseph Fielding Smith, who was present when President Woodruff talked about these angels at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple, recorded the following, quote, "One day, I was sitting in the presence of my father, President Joseph F. Smith, back about 1908 or 9, somewhere in there, and I called attention to these statements by President Woodruff, and I said I would like to go over the records from the time of the dedication of the temple up until now, and see what we can find in regard to calamities, destructions, plagues, and he encouraged me to do it, and so I did. So I went over the newspapers and over the magazines and jotted down year by year the destructions, the commotions among men, everything in the nature of a calamity, and to my great astonishment, each year they increased. And they've been increasing ever since I quit making that record. I was greatly astonished by it, and when I called the attention of one of my neighbors to it, he almost got angry at me. And he said, 'Oh, well, we have got better facilities now for discovering these things.' I don't believe it." And he is a member of the church too, but seemed to lack faith in these predictions. Well, I am doing this same exercise now, only I'm using spreadsheets, and we have seen some pretty remarkable things. And I guess this is the next thing on deck, this El Niño. Let's go to BBC Weather. El Niño set to be strongest in living memory, says Met Office. The El Niño event that is developing over the Pacific is likely to be the strongest in living memory, the Met Office has warned. The powerful natural climate phenomenon pushes up global temperatures and can increase the risks of extreme weather. Added to the effects of human-induced climate change, the Met Office is warning that it is, quote-unquote, very likely to mean 2027 is the hottest year on record globally. There's growing evidence that weather patterns around the world are already being affected, with below-average monsoon rains in India and suppressed hurricane activity in the Atlantic Ocean. Let's go to the video I was referencing by Jason A. I want to read some of the highlights here. So in 2027, natural disasters, the likes of which the world hasn't seen in a century. So that's pretty big. Later on, we're going to be experiencing weather that we've never seen before. Okay, this part, the latest forecast from the Met Office suggests that warming could exceed 3 degrees later this year. Others have projected the water temperature to reach 4 degrees above average. If that happens, it could be the El Nino of the millennium. And simply due to the fact that the Salt Lake Temple is going to be rededicated this next year, and we think about the Wilford Woodruff prophecy, and we think about how much attention has been given to the Salt Lake Temple, especially by President Nelson. He used it many times as an object lesson, like almost as if to represent ourselves individually and then the church as a whole. Checking your spiritual foundation, reinforcing your spiritual foundation, getting rid of the old debris in your life, and things like that. Okay, so, and then we got this. This is really interesting too. This part says, we haven't seen an El Nino event like this since 1877. Do you know what happened in 1877? A couple things. That's the year that President Brigham Young passed away, but it's also the year that the St. George, Utah Temple was dedicated. The St. George, Utah Temple is the longest operating temple in the church. We lost the Kirtland Temple. The Nauvoo Temple was only used for a short time, and then later it was destroyed. So the St. George, Utah Temple, in one sense, is like the oldest, or it's the longest operating temple in the church. And it was dedicated April 6th, 1877. I have felt, and I've said this on the channel, that this temple is special as well. So we have next year the rededication of the Salt Lake Temple. And the most powerful effects from this like record-breaking El Nino are going to be felt next year. And the Salt Lake Temple is the temple where the angels of destruction were released at its dedication. And it's never been rededicated since that time, not like as in an entire structure or building. So I'm wondering if this might be some kind of bookend event. Maybe the angels of destruction are going to end their work once it's been rededicated. And at that point, maybe it's time for the second coming. I don't know. But when we're talking about El Nino, the El Nino phenomenon, the last time that we saw one this strong was back in 1877 when the St. George, Utah Temple was dedicated, the longest operating temple in the church. That's really interesting. Okay, continuing. So with that event, this part says, tens of millions of people died because crop failure happened across India, across Southeast Asia. The impact of famine globally. And then she says, now I'm not suggesting that's going to be the case this time, but, and then she and others talk about the fact that, yeah, that's the impact could be pretty severe and it could affect food prices and things like that. Okay, that's all that I have highlighted from the video transcript. I'll put the link for this video in the description box below. I thought it was pretty mind-blowing. But let's cover a few other things. So my friend Jen with Christian Fire Poppy, make sure to subscribe to her. She produces Second Coming content, and she's just been such a good friend. She sent a text that said, Jared, get ready to report all the hurricanes and weather anomalies this year. The ocean here is getting the direct super El Nino warm waters, and the ocean feels like a hot tub. I looked it up, and it's the hottest water temperatures ever in history. So I decided to look that up myself. I always verify, and I came across this BBC article. World's oceans hit highest temperature on record as El Nino grows. This is an article from today. I'm recording this on Monday, the 23rd. Is it the 23rd? Oh, sorry, the 24th. The world's oceans are hotter than ever recorded, new data suggests. The average surface temperature of the planet's seas outside the polar regions hit 21.1 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Fahrenheit on Saturday, according to figures from the European Copernicus Climate Change Service. That edges the past 21.09 degrees Celsius, recorded on 3 separate days in March 2024, and is far above average for the time of year. Okay, so March 2024, that's when the previous record was broken, before this one. You know what happened in March 2024? That's the month and the year in which the church purchased the Kirtland Temple from Community of Christ, the very first temple constructed in this dispensation. Isn't this kind of weird? You know, we're talking about El Niño and ocean temperatures, and these dates are lining up with these really important temples: the Kirtland Temple, the St. George, Utah Temple, and then with the El Nino impacts next year, the rededication of the Salt Lake Temple. I feel like something is going on here. It's just, I don't know, but yeah. So March 2024, that's when the Kirtland Temple came back into the church. And the month after it came back into the church, there was the total solar eclipse, the second Great American Eclipse, and the path of totality went over the Salt Lake Temple or the Kirtland Temple. And this picture was taken by one of my subscribers, Floyd Gowans, and he's allowed me to use this. That was an incredible day. I was there for that. Okay, so I have I've put together a new spreadsheet. It is time for me to try and track temperature records, which I kind of have done in the past. Before getting this new computer, I had Google Earth on my computer, and I was trying to keep track of these type of things on my Google Earth, but it was on the desktop. It wasn't a Google Earth map like in the cloud. And so I lost all that data, but the better way to do it is with a spreadsheet. So I have a few things I want to share with you. So we got this year with the highest surface temperature the highest temperature for the ocean's surface this year. So that just happened. But then there's a couple other things really quick. So we need to remember that 2024 was the world's warmest year on record. And from what we just read, they're expecting that 2027 is going to pass this record. But before next year, if that is what happens, 2024 was the world's warmest year. Again, that's the year that the Kirtland Temple was purchased from Community of Christ. So I've added that to the spreadsheet. And then earlier this year, in July, Salt Lake City sets new highest temperature ever in 152 years of record keeping. So Salt Lake City just saw its highest temperature ever. Okay, so I have these 3 events now recorded on this new spreadsheet. I think this is the last thing I want to cover. This is from Scripps News. Record-breaking El Nino possible, bringing extreme weather, experts warn. And at this part it says, let's see, quote, "I think we're going to see weather events that we've never seen in modern history before." WFLA TV chief meteorologist and climate specialist Jeff Berardelli in Tampa, Florida, said Friday. It just blown my mind that this is coinciding with the rededication of the Salt Lake Temple. Again, President Wilford Woodruff's prophecy was that the angels of destruction which have brought calamities to the earth. They were released with the original dedication, and now we're having this rededication, and we have this event taking place. So we might be in for a ride. I would highly encourage you to be prepared. I'm not an alarmist, but I think it's wise to be prepared, both temporally and spiritually. In this case, I would just make sure that you have your house in order, that you have emergency supplies and food storage, and you have a plan in case of an emergency. You know, if flooding comes to your area, or a hurricane, or just if it gets really hot. I don't know, just all the different things that could happen with this event. So anyway, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.